Hey, fellow traveler, welcome to Third Eye Awakening. This is a podcast all about spiritual and psychic awakening, where we talk about things like the shift from 3D to 5D consciousness, the nature of time, space, the universe, the multiverse, multidimensionality, starseeds, the Akashic Records, all the things. I'm so glad that you're here with me today. I appreciate you so very much. All right, let's get into it. Hey, beautiful beings. Welcome back for another episode of Third Eye Awakening. I am your host, Amy Belair. Before we get started, if you want to create me on Instagram, you can check me out at thenorthstar.love. And if you like what we're talking about here on the podcast and you'd like to be part of an interactive community, then come join my free private Facebook group called Soul Space. Just send me a request and I'll add you. I would love to have you there. Hello, radiant beings of magic and light. I have my very first interview to share with you today. I'm so excited. I feel kind of like a sheepish turd because I recorded this interview with the beautiful Lauren McMullen back in September. I keep hearing that Marie Forleo says that you're supposed to start before you're ready. I've never taken B school. This is just hearsay. This is just what other people repeat. They quote her as saying, start before you're ready. So I started before I was ready. And consequently, it has taken me 7 months to get to a place where I'm ready to share this interview. But I just listened to it again and it is so juicy and good. Lauren's energy is amazing. I love her. I think she is the perfect person to start out my interview series. So this interview is just really all about her experience with spiritual and psychic awakening, what it looked like. She has incredible candor and she's just very real. She shares about the day-to-day sort of nitty-gritty working through it process and what it's really looked like for her. And I love it. I feel like there's so much to take away from this interview. Anyhow, I could talk forever, and I usually do, so I'm just going to cut it off now and segue right into the interview with the beautiful, radiant Lauren McMullen. Hi, and welcome to the Third Eye Awakening podcast, where we talk about spiritual awakening and all the different ways that can look for all the different people. My guest today is Lauren McMullen, a new friend of mine who I have met through Viola Hug, our mutual coach. And I'm really excited to talk to her today about her experience with spiritual awakening. Lauren is an intuitive fulfillment coach that helps women upgrade their mindset and step into their inner power so they can feel fulfilled in their life and or business. She is multi-talented, multi-skilled. She has a lot to offer, and I'm really excited to hear all about her journey with spiritual awakening. Welcome, Lauren.
Thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Amy, I'm so excited to be here. I'm so honored that you asked me to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I'm so excited that you're here. And I was telling Lauren just before I pressed record that she is officially my first interview. So it's even more exciting.
So exciting.
Okay, so Lauren, that was the synopsis bio of who you are, but of course you are a multidimensional being, like so much greater than can be summarized in one little sentence. So I would love it if you would share a little bit more about yourself, specifically kind of like who you are, what sort of things are interesting to you, where you're from, and I would love to hear what is your magic power.
Absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to try and remember all that. And if I don't get it all, you just remind me and I'll come back around to it. So again, I am Lauren McMullen. I'm an intuitive fulfillment coach. That's like the business stuff. That's out of the way. I live in or right outside Annapolis, Maryland, which is on the east coast of the United States. I haven't always lived here. I actually grew up in the middle of the country in Illinois and moved out here when I was about 13 years old. So I had a really big transition in my life at that age. Actually, it's kind of funny, and I don't know why this story is coming up, but I'm just going to tell it because normally that's some sort of sign to me, like I just need to go into it. So when I actually moved to Maryland, it was a big change. It was just me and my mom. She was actually given a job opportunity out here, and she had been dating someone who was out here. So it was like, okay, we're going to make this move, which it's about a 13-and-a-half-hour drive from where I originally grew up. And we moved out here. We brought our U-Haul, all the things. Our place was not ready. We had to stay at this hotel right on the highway. Basically, it was a nice hotel, but it was right on the highway. And we woke up the next morning and our entire moving truck with everything that I owned in my entire life was gone.
Lauren.
Yeah, it was gone. Bye. Like I was like, the only thing I had were the clothes on my back and the few toiletries that we had packed to stay overnight in a hotel.
Wow.
Yeah. So I haven't told this story in a long time. This is interesting that it's coming up. I don't know. I'm just going to go with it. But so it was like, not only was this a really big change for me anyhow, because I'm 13 years old, I was getting ready to, it was the summer. So it would have been the summer between finishing 7th grade and starting 8th grade. So like the last year in middle school, I already was like a little bit nervous about like starting at a new place, not having any friends, none of that stuff. And then that happened and it was like, what? And just for a little bit of geography, where we were staying was about 20 minutes outside of Washington, D.C. And the highway goes like directly straight there from where we were at. So I guess what happened was somebody like broke into the U-Haul. They were able to like strip back the ignition. I don't know how you carjack a car, but however that happens, and they just like basically drive the truck away. So lucky for us, we actually had some family friends of like my mom and my grandparents that lived next door to them in Illinois 30 or so years prior, and actually had moved out here and were 15 minutes from where my mom and I were actually moving, which was amazing. It was just like a really nice thing because then they were here and they were like, you come stay with us while they figure this out, because our new place wasn't ready yet. My grandparents had to leave. They had helped us like drive out and move all our stuff, but they had to leave. And this particular friend was part of the Secret Service, but had connections to the DC police. He had been a DC police officer, and he was actually able to hunt down our U-Haul.
Wow.
So they found it. It was like in some ghetto area. And it was like, they had just opened up the back of this truck and like thrown out like a yard sale, basically like an auction or something out of the back of the U-Haul. So not everything had come back. What I was most concerned about though, which I don't even know why, but what I was most concerned about was like, I'm not going to have my original birth certificate anymore. That was the thing that I was worried about at 13 years old. No idea why. I was so upset about it, as if like my whole identity had been stolen. And my mom was like, what? Like, but your toys and your games and your clothes. I was like, I don't have my birth certificate. And the funny thing is, like, the minute that we got the truck back, we opened the back of it, and right there on the middle of the floor was my birth certificate.
Oh my gosh. That's such a magical story.
Yeah, it was weird. I'm like, we had a washer, but not a dryer. We had one of our couches, but it was missing a cushion. Like, it was just random things, very, very random. Majority of my clothes were gone. I had to start 8th grade wearing clothes that my mom just like scrambled to like take me to like a thrift shop and buy a few things so that I could get through my first week of school. And here I am, 13 years old, very much aware of how like I'm the new kid walking into this school. I don't know anyone. All I want to do is fit in. Yeah. And I'm having to walk in clothes that I'm not comfortable in. They were not mine, not what I really would have picked, but like something we had to grab at the last minute. And I just remember that being like a huge, scary moment for me of like, okay, I have to like show up in this space. And normally, like, I think I was thinking before, like I could completely reinvent who I am. And yet here I have to walk in and be somebody completely different than I am as far as like my looks go on the outside because I'm wearing clothes I'm not comfortable in.
Yeah.
It was just like such a traumatic experience.
So traumatic.
And I think what happened really from that is what I've noticed over the years is that I did tend to really like hoard things after that.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a long time to realize, like, I think that story and what happened there is really what affected me, because I did have even prior, so many clothes that I cannot fit them in my dresser. I do not have enough room in my closet. I don't have space for them, yet I was terrified to give them away.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my gosh. So I think that was like a really big lesson that I have learned probably in the last few years, just being like, I have too many clothes and I have no reason to have that many clothes. I don't even wear them. Some of them don't fit. They're not even my style. And like my style has changed so much over the years. And I'm like, yet I'm holding on to all of these clothes because I'm like terrified, to give them away. And my husband would be like, can you clean this stuff out? And I'd be like, don't you dare touch it, because like that would freak me out too if he was touching it. I'm like, oh my gosh. So I feel like I really had to breathe through that and realize that if I decided to give my clothes away, then that was me being in power of that, being very much in control of it, and realizing like these clothes aren't going to bring me any happiness. These things aren't really going to bring me happiness. And I'm okay if I had to think about it in the way of like, I can make other people happy by giving these away, like giving these to people who don't have clothing, or to another thrift shop. Maybe somebody else is having an experience where they don't have clothes and they need something, and hey, maybe this will be their style and they will feel comfortable in this. And so I've really actually learned to kind of like slim down my need for material things, mainly in clothing, over the years, like kind of dealing through and working through kind of that trauma that I had as like a 13-year-old child. Like, this is crazy.
That's big time trauma. That's like, I bet you were concerned about your birth certificate and your identity because you were losing your identity, because you were already like having to reinvent yourself by moving. Like, I can only imagine how that felt. My 14-year-old son, I had to leave suddenly to go to school to become a midwife when he was 8.
Mm-hmm.
And I was going to have to move all over the place for my program. And so he chose to stay at his school where we were living. We were living with my parents in my hometown. And now, like, I'm finally in a position where I'm stable and I have a room for him in my home. And he's like, no, I'm not, like, no offense, but my friends.
Yeah.
So, I can just imagine like what a big deal it was to make such a big move in the first place when you were 13,
Yeah.
and to have all of your things, like, that's a whole other level of your identity being stripped away, and you're probably like, who even am I anymore? Like,
right.
I don't have my birth certificate. I literally don't know if I'm the same person I was when I went to bed last night.
Right. And like, how funny is it now to think, and this is just like hitting my mind, that I ask people for the information that's on their birth certificates all the time to talk about human design in my business. Like, that's another really big thing to me, is like, not that I needed that information off of my birth certificate, because I knew my mom, I don't know, wonderful on her. Like, I've always known my birth time, and that seems to be the big thing for everyone. But, like, I already knew that, but like the fact that I'm asking people, like, go check your birth certificate if you don't know the time you were born, like, it's really funny to me. Like, that was my biggest concern at 13, as if I knew, and I probably did, that was going to be an important role in my life at some point.
Time loops. Okay.
Yeah.
So, okay. Thank you for sharing that story. I'm really sorry that you had to live through that. It sounds super traumatic, and yet I bet that it sort of like really shaped your concept of identity as well.
I think so.
And okay, so will you share with us what your magic power is?
So I think my probably most magical power, I mean, besides my bright and sparkling personality, would honestly, when I work with my clients, and then even before I was working with clients, my very natural ability is to shift energies. And I can't tell you how many times I walked into a new place of employment, into a new office, and I was told later on by coworkers, like, I'm so glad you came to work here because this is such a brighter place. Like, you just shifted the energy of the room, the energy of the office, and how things were working together. I mean, A boss told me one time he was doing like at a Christmas party we were having or something. He went around, he's like, I wrote something down that I really appreciate about everyone. And he kind of went around and he was like telling everyone, and he got to me and he said, you're the office connector. And at first I was like, is he saying like I talk too much? Because I talk to everyone, you know, and that was always like something he'd be like, okay, do you think you can like go back to work though? Like he always had this like fine line of like, I'm not sure if you're socializing too much, even though I was like killing it in my business, like in what I was doing on my career. Like I was killing all sorts of sales goals. I was fine, but he had always like had a weird reaction to as much as I talk and as much as I connect with people, because he's like, I think it's really good because of your sales, you know, that you talk and connect to these people, but at the same time, like you might be a little more productive. And I'm like, this is how I roll. But yeah, I mean, and being told multiple times, like, you don't know what it was like to be here prior to you coming in. The energy was so different. It wasn't as fun. It wasn't as engaging. We didn't feel like it was a good time going to work. And so I really feel like not only was I doing that kind of unconsciously in any room that I would walk into or any situation that I would walk into, but I really continue to do that with my clients now. And it actually didn't hit me that that's really where the magic was, probably until like a few months ago, where it was like, oh my gosh, I am the lightning bolt in a midnight dark stormy sky where all of a sudden you have clarity for 3 seconds and you can see the path forward. And then you can have the faith because you've kind of seen it. And you know that I've seen that vision and that like level that you need to get to. And that's what I feel like I really bring to the table as like my magical power, my superpower.
I love that. That is so beautiful. I love that so much because I did a reading a while ago, an Akashic reading for somebody, and that was similarly her magical power too. And I was like, you have to know how important this is. Like, this is so important. You're like, yeah, like you literally have this magical, effortless ability to change energy for the better and like, you know, shift dynamics and melt tensions and without even having to friggin' do anything. And my favorite thing about that is that you don't even have to, you know, I think a lot of the time, I know I have gotten hung up in the past around like, what's my purpose? And feeling like it had to be something that translated into like a business or a career or something like that, which of course, I mean, why not?
Yeah.
But it really doesn't have to, just in the liberating way of taking the pressure off, where like, no matter what you do, Lauren, that's your magic power. And that is the gift that you bring to the world just by default, by being here. And that's such an important gift. I love that so much.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm like so happy to finally like really embrace that and really figure it out, because I've been told, I think I was actually told in an Akashic record that I had this gift for shifting energies. But at the time, I had no idea what she was talking about. I was like, okay, like, I'm just going to put that on the shelf, you know, like, you know how it is when you're doing a reading with somebody and you're like bringing up something and they're like, oh, okay, I'm just going to like nod my head and say, okay, like, but I don't get it. I don't see it. I don't see how it works. And it took me a while to like have it keep coming up again and again, and multiple people saying like, this is what you bring to the table. Because I was always like, when I was like first starting my business too, I'm like, I don't know how to tell people what my service is, because I can't just say, come to me and we'll just talk about whatever is going on in your life and then you'll get off the call and you'll feel better. Like, how do I say that? How do I advertise that? Because it doesn't make sense in like the service industry we're in. There was no way to like put it that it made sense in my mind to be able to make sense to somebody else. And I had to come to a point where now I can very clearly like state at the beginning of a workshop, like, look, my magic is I'm able to shift energy. Doesn't matter what you bring to the table, what we're talking about, whether we're diving into your human design, which I use all the time. But even if we're not doing that, I should be able to just have a conversation with you. And it doesn't matter the content. It could be the same as anyone else's content. The magic that you're buying into is the energy shifting that I'm giving while we're doing it. So it's like, okay, just how to be really confident and like show up and say that to people. And like, and you have to have that like complete faith and confidence in yourself to say something like that, which I was working on still, like really being confident in who I was and who I was showing up as like in my business and as a coach.
Yeah, it takes a while to get there, for sure. Especially I definitely feel like sometimes I've created this little bubble with my like well-curated Instagram feed and the podcasts that I listen to and the programs that I join and things like that, where I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like the most commonplace conversation now. It's like so mainstream and everybody's talking about it. And then I'll sort of like be in an interaction out in the world and I'll remember like, oh yeah, no, it's totally not mainstream.
Yeah.
And we're still at a place where we're not accepting that we are extremely powerful magical beings and that we all have like an incredible gift to share.
Yeah.
And it definitely takes a lot of self-talk to like really own that, and a lot of
I'm still working on it, like showing up in that space and just being super confident in that. And I'm sure it'll take, some more time and some more effort and some more inner work, but I'm so happy to continue to do that work. And I'm so happy to like have that direction of like, this is what I'm working towards. It's really standing in this power and showing up as who I am authentically.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a beautiful part of the journey.
Yeah.
So I would really love to hear about, so I'd love to hear about your spiritual awakening journey / experience, but I think it's important to start out by letting you define what spiritual awakening means to you.
Oh my goodness. Oh, what does it mean to me specifically? Well, I think that something I say all the time, with clients and stuff, because I talk about conditioning and us being conditioned from very early ages, from the time we're children, by our families, by society, by whatever our surroundings are. And then I talk a lot about deconditioning and kind of like taking things off the table where we've been like kind of taught to go a certain direction. And I really feel like a spiritual awakening could be any moment that you start to kind of question the status quo. Anytime you start to kind of question that. And I'm always like applauding, like I have 2 daughters, but my 12-year-old is like in the back of my car with her friend, and they're like questioning things about God or about heaven or hell. And though those are very like topics you maybe want to stay away from sometimes with certain people, I am like so beaming with pride about the fact that these 2 12-year-olds are sitting here and actually having this conversation and questioning things and talking about their beliefs with each other. And I'm like, that is so freaking powerful. And it's just, it gives me all the chills. And I'm like so excited. And I try not to chime in too much because I want them to explore it for themselves. But I think that anytime you really start to be like, can this be done a different way? Do I have to like go with what everybody says I should do? I feel like once you start to like just have a little question in your mind about something like that, that is the start to an awakening of your own. What level it takes you on from there, not sure. Everybody's going to be different on that, but I really feel like that's kind of like the place that you really start to have your awakening.
Right.
I don't know. Just what I'm like thinking here. But I think for me, though I know that I had intuitive gifts as a child, that I had an aunt who passed away, and she really brought forward to me, I think, my gifts to the way I understood, like, I'm seeing this spirit and I'm having, I can hear my aunt speaking to me, and she's causing things to happen, and she's showing up in my dreams. And then like, I remember back even further where I was having these quote unquote nightmares, but they weren't actually nightmares because I was awake. I was watching these things happen, and they were only considered nightmares because I didn't understand what was happening. And that was, kind of scary for like a 2 or 3-year-old, like, oh my gosh, what's going on? And not really being able to communicate that or explain that to my parents, like what was actually happening. They are just deeming it as a dream. And I'm saying like, no, legit, like there's a whole wall scene happening over here. Like there's things on my wall, there's things on the floor, like, but not being able to really explain that. And then I think, most of us go through a period where we like kind of start to shut that down because there isn't that guidance and that support all the time. I hope, and my fingers are crossed, that we get more and more supportive of that in children going forward. But you kind of like shut that down. And I know I've always like had this feeling of like, I know I have gifts. I just don't know what they are or how to use them. Like eventually I feel like I'll just tap into them. I know I felt like that throughout my life a lot. I didn't really feel like I had a full awakening until about 2 years ago, actually. So 2 years ago, I mean, and up to that point, I have always been like such a hustler as far as like work has gone. Like I was saying, like with my work, like I was crushing sales goals. I was always super competitive, but not necessarily with other people, with myself. Can I beat my last goal? Can I beat my last goal? Can I beat my last goal? And so I was doing that. We were saving to buy a house. That was something that we really wanted to do, my husband and I. So we were saving to buy a house, and I was like working pretty much nonstop. I barely did anything other than work, other than like come home, maybe eat and go to sleep, and then get up in a few hours and go back at it. So I didn't see my family hardly at all, because to me, I felt like the best way I could support them was by making as much money as possible. Mm-hmm. And my belief was that I had to work really, really hard to make that money. So that's what I was doing, constantly hustling, constantly working. And we were able to pay off all our debt and buy save up to buy a house within a 9-month period. Wow. And because I was like so of that mindset of like work, 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 if that tells you anything about how much I was working. And we we bought the house and we got through. That was the biggest sales year of my life in my career. I hit a huge number at work, which was good because that brings in more money. But it also, at the same time, I was trying to prove a point to my owners that, owned that business at the time, that I needed to just be in a position to only do sales, because I could bring in so much more if I was doing that. And, so I hit the end of the year. I was like so pleased. I hit the goal that I had set for myself, which I didn't even know how it was going to be possible, but it happened. And I just felt so in line with that. And it came around to the first of the year. And it was like all of a sudden I hit a wall, like an energetic wall, basically. And I was like, nothing that I know how to do or that I've been doing for the last 12 years of my career works anymore. Wow. It was like everything stopped. Like it was like I was standing still and the world was still moving around me, and I couldn't do anything to keep up, to continue on. I later would learn that that was like a complete burnout for me. That's what a burnout felt like to me. And I was like a really prickly person at that time. Like I had a bad attitude about it. I was so angry. I was angry for reasons I didn't even know why. I was super frustrated. And I also was feeling very like lazy at the same time, because I was like, I'm so used to go, 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 go. And this is forcing me to like sit still and try and figure out like, what's wrong here? What's the problem? Like, how do I fix this? What do I need to do? So I was just like, okay, nothing is working. I don't know what to do. I started talking to one of my girlfriends who has always been kind of on the witchy side and very spiritual, but it's not something we ever really connected on or really spoke much about. She had started doing tarot card readings a while before that, just for fun. And we'd never really talked about it. And I had just bought this house and I was like, let's do something fun. Let's just have her come over and we can do like a girls' night with wine, but also tarot readings. And they can pay you like $10 for like tarot readings. Like, yeah, something fun, whatever. And so she did that and everybody was having a good time and like doing that and stuff. But when I sat down to do the reading with her, and she had never really done one for me before, she was flipping over cards and I don't remember all of them, but I remember the main message being like, it's time to stop, to like remove the mask and to really start showing up as who you really are. And I was like, what? And she's like, remember we were just talking, because there's also like a spirit living in my house. And I was like, I can feel her like standing in my doorway, like looking at me, but I can't see her. That's not how my gifts necessarily worked. Mm-hmm. I'm like, I can't see her, but I know she's here. And my youngest daughter, Quinn, is like such a good medium. Like she picks up on that and knew all about her, told me a whole story about the lady. But so Ashley's like, remember how we were talking about when you were younger and all of these things would happen to you. It's because you really are gifted, and it's time to start, removing that mask and dropping the facade of who you have tried to be and fitting in, and really be who you are. And then I think she pulled like the Queen of Wands, which is all sorts of powerful. And she's like, you are the Queen of Wands.
Magic AF.
Yeah. So in fact, every time I have a reading with her, like the Queen of Wands shows up because that's who I am. So I've been chasing after like really stepping into my really Queen of Wands-esque personality and like presence since then. But that was kind of like the first time that I was like, okay, like I don't think I could have heard this 6 months ago and been ready to really hear it. But because everything else felt like it was standing still, because nothing else that I had been doing for the 12 years of my career up to that was working any longer, I was willing to question, what can I do differently? Like, how can I show up differently? What can I do to make things work for me? And that just kind of sent me on a spiral of like really then pulling out my own tarot cards. Then I got my own deck and I like started playing with that and practicing, and I was like really feeling that. And then it became more about like personal development and spirituality and really questioning like the beliefs that I grew up with. And that continues to happen every day. I'm like questioning a new belief of something I've like had this unwritten rule in my life that I'm like, why have I been doing it this way? Is there a rule that says that? Is that true for everybody? Like, what am I doing? Like that, and then I feel so silly afterwards because I'm like, no one else has been living by this rule, just you. Like, what are you doing? But that's kind of like how it all started. And then right after the tarot reading, I want to say like a month later, and I was still working so much at that office job, but I was the last one out of the office and the first one in the next day. And I had noticed I'd moved up to this new level, like the third floor in the office. And I was kind of up there by myself. I think that was an attempt at my boss to get me to stop talking so much and be more productive. But I had noticed when I had moved up there, like a couple months prior, that there was this like dead bumblebee that was like on the windowsill. I noticed it. I didn't know it was important or significant. I just thought, well, the cleaning people obviously don't do their job all the way. Like this thing has been sitting here, and it had sat there for months. I obviously wasn't worried about cleaning it off either. It was still sitting there. But I came in that morning and that dead bumblebee was on my desk. It was no longer on the windowsill. And there was a good like 5 feet between my desk and this window. So there's like no possible way, like it just blew over. Like I was like looking at all the scientific reasons, like running my own like experiments of like, how did this happen? Why is this thing on my desk? And I was like, what a horrible thing to do to someone, is like put a dead bee on their desk. The one in the window was gone. Nobody else had been in the office. It was really just me that whole time. So I was like, this has to mean something. Like, what is this telling me? And I think that's the first time I really started to be like, this has to be a sign. What are my guides trying to tell me? Like, what's going on here? And looking it up, a bumblebee actually signifies, or as a spirit animal or a totem or a power animal, I don't know which one, but what I read was that as much as we perceive bumblebees to be really busy all the time, like the working bee, the worker bees and all of that, they actually still take time to enjoy their life. And it was a big smack in my face of like, you are not balancing, you're not living. Like you're going to be this dead bumblebee if you keep hustling like you are and working and not spending time with your family and not doing things that are just overall good for your soul. And so I really honor a bumblebee a lot, because I'm like, it just was the message I needed in that moment of like, this isn't working. This isn't going to work for you. And you are not actually living a life. You're just like in survival mode basically all the time. So I think that was probably like the biggest like sign. And from there, it was like all the personal development, all the mindset work and the manifesting. And then I found human design, and I never felt so seen or exposed in my life, which helped me to then like dive in, study it like crazy, and now like offer other people like that help through human design. So
first of all, I want to say how I love how cheeky your spirit guides are, that they were like, okay, she's seen this dead bee like 6 or 7 times and the message is not getting through. We're literally putting it under her nose.
We are going to put it right where you'll see it. It was like directly in front of my phone, which the first thing I do in the morning was check my voicemails. So it was like directly right where I would see. There's no possible way I was missing that dead bee symbol.
Amazing. Okay, so I just would like to touch on how hard it must have been during that period when everything stood still, when you were so used to hustling, and how I'm guessing that probably you felt extremely out of control, extremely like you probably went through a lot of questioning of like yourself and your definitions of success, and why aren't things working, and am I a failure, and how hard it is to slow down when I think it's really hard for the majority of people to slow down. I really can't speak for other places in the world apart from the culture that I'm most exposed to, which is Western culture. Mm-hmm. So I'm not even going to try. But in Western culture, it seems to me that it's really hard for anybody to slow down, but especially for people who are natural hustlers. And especially when you get used to seeing results based on your hustle, to then be sort of forced into like inaction and stillness and questioning is like an incredibly uncomfortable experience. And I imagine it probably cracked you open a little bit.
Oh yeah, for sure. Cause I was like, what do you mean this isn't working? Like, why all of a sudden can't I do any of the things I've been doing? Like, why nothing that I knew how to do worked. Mm-hmm. It was like resistance after resistance after resistance after resistance. And it didn't matter what direction I tried to go around it. The point was I was still trying to do the same things or get the same result. And that obviously was not where I needed to be, and not what I needed to see at that point to really kind of step into and embody who I was. And so it was like, though I probably had signs, 1.5 million signs. We know that spirit is constantly like giving us signs for things. And when you ignore them and ignore them and ignore them, they like the pebbles that they throw at you start to get bigger until they just like throw a whole freaking brick wall in front of you energetically that you're like, okay, I surrender. Like until I could really say like, just help me. I'll do anything. I'm ready. Like, please help me figure this out. Oh, I'm getting like goosebumps just talking about this. Until I was like ready to completely surrender that control and that like need to be doing and need to be like knowing all the answers. Until I released that control, there wasn't anything that was going to work, until like I was in that space of like, okay, I'm ready to accept like the fact that these things are no longer going to work, and I have to let them go, and I have to figure out a new way. And I had to question the beliefs that I had that in order to make money that you had to work really hard. Mm-hmm. That was so foreign to me because I'd never, ever seen that before. I don't have an example with it, like in my bubble at the time that could show me that they just like easily made money. Mm-hmm. Without having to do the really, really hard work, or without even having to do the things that they didn't enjoy. So many of us in this country, especially, like are still working in jobs that we absolutely despise, mm-hmm. that we hate, that we absolutely dread getting up in the morning and going in. But we feel like there isn't another choice because we need money to survive, and we barely have that. And it is very much a survival feeling. That is kind of also then disguised because it's like, this is just what you do. This is just what you do.
Yeah.
And questioning that and starting to realize that there were people out there that are really following their passions, and that it doesn't feel like they're working hard because they're doing the things that they enjoy. Whether they're actually putting in a lot of hours into it, it doesn't feel like work. And that's the difference. It's not that you just don't work, it's just that you have to work in a way that really makes sense for you energetically and spiritually and, physically, for what you can handle and what you can really bring to the world. So I think, kind of like stepping back and being like, okay, like, what do I do? Because to me, I'm like, I'm a very logical person. It took a lot for me to like move the logic to the side and be like, okay, now what? Like, how do I just trust spirit? How do I just trust the universe or God, like, and myself? Like, how do I find trust in those things? And It took a while, honestly. I mean, and I'm one of those people who goes from 0 to 60 very quickly. Like when I want to do something, I want to do it. And I'm like all in and like jumping off the deep end rather than like dipping my toe in. And as I started this journey, I was like seeing people using their intuitive gifts. And I was like, I just want to be them. I just want to be at that level already. I don't want to have to do all the transition crap in the middle. Like that is so not me. I don't do the hard work in the middle. Like I just want to be at the top of that mountain peak at this point. And I had very real, very hard lessons in the fact that that's not where you don't go from the bottom to the top like that. Yes, you can skip around and like skip points and stuff as a manifesting generator, but you still have to go back and do that foundational work. Standing at the top of that mountain is going to do nothing for you when there's no foundation of the mountain. You are just going to fall. It's not helpful. So I really had to like explore emotions that I found that I was suppressing, which I'm an emotional authority in human design. Like emotions are so important to my well-being and the way that I work energetically. And here, my whole life up until the age of like 31, I had been suppressing emotions, not dealing with hard things. I was actually raised by both of my parents are open emotionally. They have that open solar plexus there. And what people with that tend to do is kind of suppress their emotions because they're not normally their own. They just are like, oh, avoidance, that'll go away. Not a big deal. Like they don't like to feel it because they feel it and it's amplified more than anybody else is feeling it. Yet for me, I have to feel those emotions. I have to go through them. I have to go through my wave of the high highs and the low lows to come back to a place of neutrality and make decisions. Like that's how I'm supposed to make my decisions. And here, I'd never made aligned decisions because I was suppressing the emotions and not allowing them to be true. And when negative things would come up or things that made me sad or angry or anything that I conceived as being like, that's a negative emotion, I would literally just like cover it up with my smile and my personality and be like the bubbly, eternally optimistic person that ignored all the bullshit. Like I was in such an avoidance. And that was something that was a really big part of this journey as well. Like right after like hitting that wall is like, wow, like I have an issue with abandonment. Like I'm terrified of this. Like, and that was something from childhood and past lives that was coming up that I had no clue that I felt that way because I had always just been like, nope, I'm fine that things didn't work out with my parents and that my parents split and that my dad wasn't a huge part of my life when I was younger. And I'm, you know, like, I'm just going to be fine because I'll just take whatever he'll give me. And then also like where I was tying my worth in, like for my whole life, I've tied my worth into doing well in school, being really great, accelerating at sports, getting awards, you know, getting a job that everybody considered to be the way it should be, you know, and then making a lot of money or hitting certain career goals. Like that to me was how I was measuring my value and my worth. And that is 100% not the way that it is. Like we are all born innately worthy. We can't do anything to mess it up. It doesn't matter what we do in our life. Like you can't measure it by external things like that. Mm-hmm. And that was a really, really big realization I had within my awakening that has helped immensely.
Yeah. And so what was your process for working through all, like, how did you just intuitively know that some of the abandonment stuff was coming from past lives as well as this one? Or like, what was your process to sort of start meeting those emotions and all those layers of yourself that are on the way up the mountaintop?
Yeah. So I actually hired a mentor. That is something that I did. And it was the first mentor that I hired. It was just like a little 6-week thing, but I was like, she was so intuitively gifted and I wanted to be that. I wanted to be her. But what I found through that process was I can't be her. I need to be me. That's why I'm here. And she gave me some homework where I really found that journaling was the strongest thing that I could do because it was actually me allowing myself to be poured out and emptied out onto a page, whether it was like typing it or writing it or whatever. And she had given me this homework that week that was like, what's your favorite number? And like from 1 to 9, what's your favorite number? And I was like, I don't know, 3, just like randomly. And she's like, I want you to write 3,333 words in a Word document. Just open it up and start typing.
Amazing.
And I was like, about what? She's like, anything, just whatever comes up. And I was like, I don't know what to do with that. Cause here's my logical mind. Like, okay, but is there like a theme or like, you want me to write about a certain thing? Like, cause I can creatively make up anything, you know? And she's like, no, I just want you to write from your soul. And I was like, I don't know how to do that. You know, I don't know how to do that. But so I just opened up the Word document and I just sat there and I just let my fingers start typing. And that's actually how I found out about my abandonment issue and the fears that I had around that, because I was talking about also like how I have always strived to make everyone in my life happy, to find approval from them, to get them to tell me that they're proud of me, to feel like I'm on the right track and that I'm being impressive, that they could like even go and tell their friends and like other friends and family, like, look at Lauren, she's doing amazing. I'm just so proud of her. And like, I wanted them to gush over me because I was terrified if I didn't, that they wouldn't be there any longer. And that was like a huge thing of like, oh my God, like what? And it like kind of fell out. Like I was terrified of being abandoned. Now my parents split up and I didn't, though my dad kept in contact, I didn't see him as often as I would have liked to when I was younger. And then we moved out to Maryland. So then I'm 13 and a half hours away from him by car. And I felt like that was a really big reason. But as I was talking to my mentor and she was saying, I don't feel like it's just this lifetime that you're trying to heal this. Mm-hmm. Yes, you had a version of that kind of happen within this lifetime, but it was only to kind of give you that lesson once again. You know what I mean? Like it's,
so you could work through it.
Exactly. And she's like, this isn't even as bad as it could have been, but you have had other lifetimes where when you did show up as who you truly were, you felt abandoned or you were betrayed or whatever. So that's kind of like, it's all coming together here for you to heal this. Mm-hmm. And actually, before we jumped on this interview, Amy, I was trying to reflect today that we're recording this, at least, is the Pisces full moon.
Oh, yeah.
And, full moon's all about releasing things. And I was thinking back to the Pisces new moon in March of this year and trying to think of like, what is it I was setting intentions for? Because they should be coming to a full circle, or I know that I haven't fixed them and they're now going to pop up today and tomorrow for me to really deal with. And I was like, just writing down how at that point in March of this year, I was really focusing on cutting energetic cords and ties to family members and other people, their judgments and their ideas of like what I was doing, and really like feeling connected to them and trapped by those opinions and those feelings. And so it's really funny that this is coming up today, that I'm like talking about it, because that is something I was working really hard on at the beginning of this year. And I can tell you that it has worked. And I always love like a physical confirmation of like the inner work I've done. And when I saw my dad for the first time this year, was a few months ago, and he showed up and I went to give him a hug, and he was so much smaller than I remembered. And it wasn't actually physically, because he's the same that he has always been physically, but it was energetically. Like he didn't have that looming presence over me, like of like, hey, I'm down here, pay attention to me, I need all of your approval. I felt that when I went to hug him, and it shocked me. Like it was like, oh my goodness. And I don't feel the need to like call my grandparents and get approval before I do whatever I want to do in my life any longer. And that was something that I was like working to like break away from. Not that they were bad or anything like that, but I found that I was really living my life in like a container of like, okay, how do they see Lauren, and like, what is she doing? And is this okay in their mind? Like, do they approve? If they don't approve, I don't know if I can do that. And really realizing like, I can make my own decisions. Like I am an adult. Mm-hmm. I've earned that right. I'm an adult. I can make my own decisions. I can decide what I do with my life, and I can decide what I do with my family and how I raise my kids and where I live and how I dress and all of these things. And just realizing like I have all the power here was just like mind blowing to me. But yeah, I mean, like that's kind of how it started. Like journaling is the way to go. Like even if you don't have a mentor, like journaling it out is like, it can be such a powerful thing to just let it pour out on a page and then be like actually confronted with it by yourself.
it's really off. Like, I feel like the reason journaling is so effective is because it's really ready to come out. It's just, it has to bypass your conscious mind. That is like the ego part of our conscious mind that is like, no, holy shit, this is what we know. I'm Lauren. I've been Lauren. This is Lauren. We're not talking about these other things because they're not. And, but the rest of you is like, oh no, I am ready. And it's just like the perfect bypass. Like it takes a, you know, like maybe a few sentences of sitting there awkwardly and being like, I am starting to type now. I don't know what I'm typing. I don't know what this is about, and then eventually it just starts flowing.
Yeah, exactly.
I love this story because I feel like it really shows the power of and the transformation available through inner work, and without it even having to be like huge, massive life changes, just the consciousness and the, I don't know, I guess the awareness that things can be different, even if you have no idea what that looks like. And like just the willingness to start doing work on yourself. And really, like, what inner work is, I think, is just the understanding that there's so much to yourself to discover. And like a lot of the time, I know when I was going through my whole romantic dating journey in my life, I would get frustrated because I would create these dynamics where, you know, I felt really not seen by the person I was with. And like, I was like, why don't they want to know what my favorite color is? Like, why don't they like want to discover who I am? I want to know this about them. And then I really realized, like, nobody's ever going to know you as well as you know yourself. And like, that's just it. Nobody else is obligated. Nobody else can. Like, you get to know yourself. You have the opportunity to discover how amazing you are. And that's really like so much of what the whole journey is about.
Absolutely. And just as well, like, I thought I knew who I was. Like, and that's the other thing, like, you have to get to a point of being willing to look at things differently, to accept things as, you know, maybe there isn't just one way. Maybe I've been avoiding parts of myself that are uncomfortable. And I think the thing I've learned most through this journey is I can do hard things and I can face hard things and I still stand here and survive somehow. Like, I've made it through every possible thing that has happened in my life. Even if it's been the worst day of my life, I'm still here. I'm still standing and I'm still making it through the world. And I know that each thing that happens, each thing I've attracted into my life for whatever reason has been here to teach me something more about myself. And gives me a chance to really make those, you know, transitions and to kind of transmute those energies to what it is that I really am desiring. And so I would say for anyone who's like going through a spiritual awakening, like, to me, it is the most courageous thing that you can do is kind of go through this and really, really get honest with yourself about yourself. Like, because we're not all perfect, but I say this line all the time. I feel like it's so corny, but it's so true. Like, the only thing that you can do perfectly in your life is to be yourself. Yeah. So like, give yourself some grace. I know I have learned grace and acceptance so hard over these last couple of years with myself and not just with myself, but with other people, and allowing other people to kind of come into their own power, because I don't need to control every situation. I can let it go and have trust that they need to have the lessons that they're going to have. So if they make a mistake, or in my eyes, it's a mistake, it's not actually a mistake. It's part of their journey. And I have to let that go and let people do their own thing. Like, I don't need to be in control of anyone but myself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. We have so much in common.
That's why we get along so well.
Okay. So another question I was going to ask you is, Do you have any tools that you've come across? I mean, obviously you mentioned human design. I would love to hear more about that. But any tools or systems apart from human design and journaling that you've come across that things that really help you feel anchored and helped you to get through the harder parts of this journey, and then also ones that support you now that you are sort of through some of the hard part and into the easier part again?
Yeah, crying. Before I started the awakening process, I would say, and like on this road of self-discovery, I was not a crier, but I found that there's nothing you can do to help it. And it is the biggest release and something that is so helpful when I'm just feeling really, really frustrated and really overwhelmed. Even like as early as like last week, I think I was in an emotional low, and I just burst out crying, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to try to hold this back any longer. I'm just going to let it out, because obviously it's my body releasing these things that need to be released. Like it's these frustration feelings, these sadness or whatever. And I would have never thought I'd say crying as a tool, but it honestly is such a beautiful release. I have found that just going outside barefoot in the grass is so comforting to me. And just standing there and taking some deep breaths and just imagining that like there are roots of light coming out of my feet and connecting with the earth is so grounding, and something that we need sometimes when I know for me personally, like when I get in my head, like I have to do all of these things for my business so that it's like doing really well and doing all of these things. And like grounding is like the biggest help there, is like realizing like it doesn't all have to be done today. Not everything is in this moment. For an emotional authority as I am, there's no truth in the now anyway. So anything that's happening right now doesn't necessarily mean anything at all. It's just could be here for me to experience it. Other tools, journaling is a big one. And also finding a tribe is so important. Having people that understand where you're at or what you've been through or what they've been through, I think has been the deepest thing. Like I really, really value deep connections with people, not this like surface level, like, hey, you're so cute on the internet. Like I want to be able to like, and I might say that to you on the internet, but still like, I want to have these deeper, meaningful conversations. I want to honestly know who Amy is on a soul level. Like that to me is the most comforting thing, because it allows you to show up as yourself and me to show up as myself. And that is, I think, the most freeing thing as well. Like not having to worry like, oh my God, you're going to judge me for whatever weird story comes out of my mouth today. I didn't feel that way. I just felt like, whatever, I'm just going to talk, and like whatever comes out is supposed to come out so that we can have a discussion about it or heal it for me or for you or for somebody who's going to listen to this podcast. And I think, as much as I love books and podcasts and live trainings and all of those things, learning how to just sit with yourself.
Oh yeah.
Is so important. Being able to just turn everything off. And a lot of times I'll do that when I go outside, but like just sitting in silence. It is the hardest thing you can do. Trust me, it's the hardest thing you can do, even though it's so simple, but it is so needed, because I find that I get my best answers when I'm doing things like that. When I'm feeling out of control or feeling overwhelmed or whatever, just like sitting in silence by myself. I just set a timer for like 5 minutes at least, or 10 minutes, and just breathing and trying not to hold on to any thoughts running through my head, which can be very hard at first. But it's something that you learn to master over time. Did I answer your question? I'm thinking like, I don't even know if I've given you everything you needed to know there.
No, those are fantastic, especially because I don't know if you did this on purpose, but those are all like really accessible, free options. Which is great too, because exactly like as much as it's amazing that we live in a time where there are so many opportunities to invest in ourselves, invest in support and care for ourselves as we go through challenges and questioning our identities and things like that. There also can be like an overwhelm, like it can end up just being more noise that takes you farther away from the truth, and the truth totally exists within it. It really, really does, and we really don't need anybody else to translate it for us. It's just a nice confirmation when somebody does, but
oh yes.
really, yeah.
And that's something I did really struggle with too, is, human design is probably the biggest tool that I use in my business. I know we mentioned that. And I just wanted to say that human design came to me at a point within my journey where I felt like I needed to consume all the things. I needed to buy all the courses. I needed to work with all the coaches. I needed to do all the meditations, all the whatever anybody was putting up and they were offering the answer. That's what I felt like I needed at that time, because I still didn't understand who I was. Even though I was going through and learning these lessons, I still felt lost. I still felt like not everything was working and I wasn't sure how I was going to make this work. And human design came to me at that point. That's the first time I heard about it. And I felt so seen. I felt so understood. And I felt like there's absolute power within knowing all of the things that this can provide me. Yeah. And I kind of fell into a rabbit hole of it where I was like so obsessed and researching all of the things and all of the differences in the charts. And I think the best thing about it is that it really allows for you to be yourself. It gives you that permission that it's okay to be who you are and to do things differently than other people, because that's who you were born and designed to be. Human design is quite literally, it is the science of differentiation. It is about us all being very, very different from each other. Yes, there are similar ways that some of us work, but your human design chart is as unique to you as your fingerprints. Mm-hmm. No two people have the same exact chart, even though at the surface level or at the basic level, it seems like, oh yeah, we're the same type and we're the same authority and we're the same profile and all of these things. Deep down, if you keep digging further and further down, you are never going to be the same as anybody else. They are as unique to you as a fingerprint. And so kind of really getting confirmation of, this is who I am. It's okay that as a manifesting generator, I start a lot of things, but don't always finish everything. That was like such an annoyance to my husband about me. He would be like, are you sure? Like when I started this journey too, he's like, are you sure you're going to like keep up with all this spiritual woo-woo bull crap? Like, is this just another fad for you? Like I've seen you start and stop so many things. Mm-hmm. I literally have a blanket that I started knitting like 7 years ago or 5 years ago or something that's still sitting in my closet, has not been finished. I was one to like start something, try it out, be really, really excited and lit up by it in the beginning, and then kind of get towards the middle or not even to the middle sometimes and be like, no, it's just not for me. I've lost interest. I'm bored. On to the next thing. But that is the lifestyle of a manifesting generator. And knowing that through human design, it being confirmed to me that I am working within my design when I do things like that, brought this consciousness and this awareness to it. And also this relief of like taking that weight off of my shoulders of trying to feel like I needed to get better at doing everything I started.
Yeah.
And that was not the truth.
Character flaw that, I'm a manifesting generator too. And same. And I found out.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I knew it. There's nothing wrong with me.
Right. Like, and also learning about who I was on that design level gave me a chance to also then learn about my children and my husband and who they were on a design level and how they are meant to work. And it just created this really beautiful acceptance. Like I'm always talking about acceptance of myself, but it's also acceptance of others, because you meet them where they're at. Like you can come together and be like, I don't need to change this about you. It's not a character flaw. It is who you are actually meant to be. It's who you are designed to be. And just having that really deep understanding of yourself and other people is the most healing thing that I think has ever been like put in my lap.
Yeah.
Like I said earlier, like I was, born with, to these two parents with open emotional centers. I would have never known that had I not found human design, and never realized that the patterns they set, though they conditioned me into kind of avoiding some of these hard topics or really facing those emotions, I would not have understood that they were just doing it the way that they felt was the right way. Not because they were maliciously trying to change who I was on a design level. It was just kind of having this understanding of like our parents, our grandparents, whoever raised you was really just doing the best they could with the knowledge they had at the time. Mm-hmm. And just having grace for that and understanding like, oh, that's the way that they worked in this way. And that just doesn't work for me because I'm different and I do it this way. And that's completely okay too.
Yeah. That's amazing. I am just new to human design myself, so I'm probably going to need to get a chart reading with you.
Yay! Well, I'm offering a special this month, so you should jump on that.
Okay. Okay. Well, so how can people work with you? What have you got on offer currently, and where can people go to connect with you?
Awesome. So I have so much going on for the month of September because for me, this was like a whole new thing, like stepping into September. It is the first time I have not been working a 9-to-5 job and my kids are going to school and I'm like alone during the day, Monday through Friday. And I'm like, what am I doing?
Done. Amazing.
Yeah. So it was like, this is a whole new thing. And like, I just felt like September's all new beginnings. Kids are going back to school. Teachers are going back to school. Things are just starting again. Here we are with a Pisces full moon today, which is like the end of the astrological like cycle or whatever. I'm not really all that great with astrology, but like today is like the end of the astrological year or something. Like we are all starting over in the next couple of days. So this is really perfect for September, I think. But for a while, I took human design away from the focus of like the focal point of my business. And I used to offer readings all the time. I took those off the table because I was feeling like, oh, they're only going to come to me for human design. When I love to talk about mindset and manifesting and really tapping into your emotional waves and how all of those things really shaped like who I am and how I can give that to other people. Mm-hmm. However, I've been called over and over to human design. I keep getting all these external signs and I finally decided to answer the call and I brought human design back to my business this month as just its own session. So I'm doing a special for September, which may feed into October. I have no idea when this podcast is going on the air. So for your listeners, if they want to take advantage of this, even if it's October, I will still honor it for them. Okay. But I'm doing a human design 101 basic session. So it's like getting to know your type, what that means, your authority, how to make decisions for yourself, and probably a little bit about your profile and how that works in your life. That's a 20-minute session. It's $60 this month. So I'm like, this is like the least I've ever offered this stuff for. I'm just like, I was so excited to talk about it and bring it back. And then I'm doing a human design, like next level session, which is 60 minutes. So you'll get a little more in depth. We'll kind of go through the centers and all of that and how that works within your life as well. That's $175 this month. And then I have Rewrite the Rules, which is all about breaking through limiting beliefs and unwritten rules that we've been living by and been held back by. That is going on. That's an evergreen offer. It's just on my website all the time. But that is like a one-day mini course that I was super excited to bring out because so often the complaint is I don't have the time to do a full course. Right. So I've started releasing mini courses that you can buy. You can complete it within one day. It's got like a workbook and a video, and you can do it on your own time whenever in the middle of the night. It doesn't matter to me. It won't bother me. I don't have to be up for it. So you still get the same information and you can kind of start to work through your limiting beliefs and unwritten rules, which to me is the basis of being able to manifest anything. You have to start with why you don't believe you can have it in the first place. So that's on offer on my website. And I have a 90-minute session that's always out there. That's more for the mindset, the manifesting, and human design all mixed together into one. And this month with that, you buy a 90-minute session, you're getting the Rewrite the Rules mini course for free as a bonus to that. So yeah, I'm like packing all these bonuses in this month. And then I always have ongoing one-on-one coaching available for someone who's maybe looking to kind of like step into this journey or even is creating a business, a creative business owner, and wants to kind of use human design and the mindset stuff to kind of support them in that. So that's going on. You can find all of that on my website. I would go to www.soulradiantlife.com. What is it, / links. I will send it to you so you can put it in your show notes as well. But that will have like a list of all of the links to get to any of that stuff. I always love having new connections on Instagram. You can find me there. I am Lauren McMullen. Mm-hmm. Or feel free to come and join my Facebook group, which I have a lot of fun and I've been doing more human design things in there. So just general knowledge or little pick-me-ups happening in there. At this point, that's called Soul Radiant Living on Facebook. And you can find that just by typing that in.
Nice. Super exciting.
And then, and my podcast. I have a podcast too, if you'd like to check that out. Yeah. And Amy has been a guest on there. So you want to check out her beautiful story that she shares there. It is Soul Radiant Radio. And you can find that on any major podcast platforms, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, I think Google Play, all of those. So beautiful. Yes, come and find me. Let's hang out. Let's be friends. Tell me you heard this episode, all of those things.
Yeah, totally. And I will, of course, include all that stuff in the show notes so that people can connect with you and check you out and look you up on Instagram while they're listening. And definitely, if you liked this episode, then screenshot it and tag us both. Put it in your stories. Let us know that you're listening. Share it with anybody who you think would also enjoy this conversation. And yeah, it's been a really, really fun conversation. I'm super excited. I've now officially done my first interview and it was awesome. I probably could have gone on for an obnoxiously long time.
Yep.
So we'll probably have to just chat privately sometime in the future and become really, really good friends.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Thank you so much for your time, Lauren, and your story and sharing what the spiritual awakening journey has looked like for you. I have no doubt that it's going to support other people who are going through spiritual awakening themselves and who are just kind of looking around for examples of what it looks like, how to move through it, and how, really, really doing it can change your life for the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lauren. And thank you everybody for listening and for spending your beautiful, precious time with us. Wasn't that a great conversation? Isn't she amazing? Well, since that was recorded 7 months ago, obviously the awesome offerings that she spoke about are not necessarily currently available. I checked in with Lauren at the last minute, typical me, and I haven't heard back from her, so I can't tell you what her current offerings are, but based on her Instagram account, it looks like she is mostly doing photography right now, true to her manifesting generator type, just changing it up as her soul tells her to do. So anyhow, you should definitely follow Lauren though, because she has a beautiful Instagram account and she has just such a lovely sparkling energy. So check her out. Okay guys, thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this interview. My next podcast episode is going to be a good one. I've been feeling the continuous urgings from my spirit sources to delve into the darkness and talk about the darkness that we are facing, that we cannot really turn away from anymore during these very bizarre and intense times, and how we can deal with it. So I'm going to be brave. I'm going to go into it. And that's what you can look forward to in my next podcast episode. So stay tuned. Hope you guys are all surviving and doing well. Lots of love, fam. Thank you so much for being here with me through this episode. You are beautiful, magical, and powerful. You are so appreciated. Please don't forget to rate, review, subscribe, and share. And I hope to catch you on the next episode.